I call this meeting of the Northeast Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will now adjourn into executive session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, private consultation with the board's attorney. 551.074, to discuss personnel or to hear complaints against personnel, and the time is 5:30. The board will now reconvene into open session, and the time is 6:16. On behalf of the trustees, I would like to welcome you to this evening's meeting of the Northeast Independent School Board. This is a business meeting of the board held in public. We appreciate your attendance and request your respectful attention. We welcome your comments during the Matters from the Floor section of the agenda. If you signed up to address a specific action agenda item, you will be called at that time. We wish to emphasize that this is a business meeting of the board, and while those in attendance may disagree about issues, it is our expectation that everyone will conduct themselves in a respectful and professional manner. Disruptions to this meeting by anyone will not be tolerated. In the event any person or group disrupts the meeting, a warning will be given to stop any disruptive behavior. Anyone persisting in disruptive behavior will be removed from the meeting. The board may also call a recess in the event of persistent disruption so that individuals who engage in disruptions can be removed. It is our intent to conduct the meeting in an orderly fashion. Finally, I would like to remind you that it is the mission of Northeast to challenge and encourage each student to achieve and demonstrate academic excellence, technical skills, and responsible citizenship. Item 5, Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance, Madison High School, Mr. Warnley.
Good evening, Madam President, board members, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. It's my pleasure to introduce Michaela Garcia, who will be giving the invocation tonight. Joining Michaela is her wonderful family, her mother and father, Terry and Louis Garcia, and Michaela's sister, Danny. If I could please stand and be recognized. Michaela is one of our avid students who has been in the program since the 7th grade. She is a very dedicated and successful student and has a smile and personality that brightens up the day of everyone in the room. Michaela?
Good evening. As we gather here today, we ask for guidance as we begin this meeting. We ask for knowledge as we make our decisions and hope to engage in good conversation. We are grateful for the time we have together and hope to make progress in the improvement of our district. We appreciate everyone being here and look forward to continuing to focus on our goals for the NEISD staff and students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is also my pleasure to have with me Daniel Perez, who will be reciting our pledges today. Daniel is today here with his mother, Blanca Perez, who I know is very proud of him. If you could please stand. Daniel is an exceptional student who is not only our National Honor Society president, but he is also our top-ranked student, a very driven yet very humble young man. Daniel?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Michaela and Daniel. If you'll come forward, Ms. Winkley and Dr. Micah are going to come down. We're going to take your picture, please, and we have a certificate for you. Yes. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate you taking the time to come join us. And you're welcome to leave now. You're welcome to stay. But I'm sure you have other things that you need to do. Item 6, recognitions. A, President's remarks on acknowledgement of special calendar events. This month is Library Month, and so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of our librarians for everything that you do on a daily basis for our students and our staff, because I know that you, I've actually been able to help do some lessons with them when I was volunteering, so very fun. So thank you again for everything. Item B, 2022 NDA Small Varsity High Kick Champions, Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you, President Grono, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Julie Shore, our Executive Director for Fine Arts, is at the podium to address this agenda item.
Thank you. Attending the National Dance Alliance National Competition in Orlando, Florida is always a memorable experience. However, when you can experience one of our schools walking away with the national title, that is an experience like no other. Teams must first receive a bid to this national competition, and if they receive a bid, they are given the opportunity to compete against hundreds of schools from across the nation. It is thousands of dancers over a 3-day competition, all fighting for that top spot. Having the opportunity to watch the MacArthur High School Bramadors win that top spot with their small varsity high kick routine was such an amazing experience. The contest organizers make the directors stand on the side, like on a wall, and the girls get to be up on this lifted stage, and there's like intense music going. It's very stressful. So when they got to the top 5, I was thrilled for Mac and so proud of them. Then they announced the 4th place winners. Then the 3rd place, and my heart was beating so fast, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is amazing. I looked over at Stephanie Exum, who is the MacArthur dance director, who did not know that I was watching her, but she was on the side of the wall, like she's supposed to be. And she pulls out her phone. I can see her. She's ready to videotape this announcement. And when they did not say MacArthur High School in the 2nd place position, and she realized that her girls were the national champion high kick winners. Oh my goodness, the look on her face was priceless. I honestly say that I've known Miss Exum for a very long time. I have never seen her run so quickly, and I have never seen her clear about a 4-foot-high stage in one jump in my whole life. It was the sweetest thing to see her celebrating with her team. I truly do wish that you all could have been there to see it. Tonight, I would like to recognize these talented young ladies and their director for their accomplishment. Abigail Arnwine. Ansley Bryant. Cadence Burks. Cameron Clements. Amelia Contreras. Ada Hagens. Bridget Husky. Giovanna Perkins. Isabella Rodriguez. Laurel Weaver. And the MacArthur High School Dance Team Director, Miss Stephanie Exum. I would like to recognize Mr. Joaquin Hernandez, who went on the trip and was such a great spirit the whole time. So congratulations, girls, for your win at Nationals. What an accomplishment. We're going to take a picture, so if you want to scoot together.
Mom or Dad, do you want to come take a picture real quick? Come on.
Yay, congratulations.
Miss Shore, I love to hear you tell a story. I got goosebumps about 3 times.
Oh, I'm so glad.
It was exciting, so I can't wait for your next story.
Item C, UIL 6A CX State Champions. Mr. Jimenez.
Thank you. Ms. Shore is going to be up here
Okay.
to do this agenda item. Thank you.
Churchill High School debate students finished in first place at the UIL 6A CX State Tournament. CX means cross-examination.
Thank you.
Securing back-to-back state championship wins for policy and debate.
Oh, wow.
Kana Blanton and Natalie Stone won their way to the state championship meet and did not lose a single judge's ballot through the entire tournament. They won every debate on a 3-0 decision on their way to winning this state championship by defeating Plano East in the finals. This win makes Churchill debate the back-to-back 6A champions, and junior Natalie Stone has been a part of both of those state championship teams. I'd like to recognize these fantastic debaters. First, Kana Blanton. And Natalie Stone. And they are joined by their very talented coach, Mr. Preston Stolte. We're going to group together for a picture.
Congratulations again. Item D, Johnston High School PTSA Smart Driving Club. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'm going to say a few words, and I'm going to turn it over to you because you were there with me as well. So last week, I had the privilege and the honor of going down to City Council and listening to our students and Ms. Cox, along with several other parents, talk about the Safe Driving Club that is out at Johnston High School. And to say that they represented the Northeast Independent School District and Johnston High School well would be truly an understatement. It was amazing how well they spoke about the responsibility that we all have to really keep our eyes on the road and out of our phone. I think I heard it best when it's like an addiction with our phone, and we always think we have to have it in our faces instead of paying attention. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mrs. Grona, to take it away.
I just have a few more comments. April is National Distracted Driving Awareness Month, and Johnston PTSA Smart Driving Club members have been working with the city and District 9 to develop ways to remind the city of San Antonio that we have a no cell phone usage while driving ordinance. This ordinance was passed in 2014 with the help of this club and makes it against the law to use your phone while driving, even at a stoplight, which I didn't know that. As Dr. Micah mentioned, they visited City Council last week, and they were granted a Safe Driving Day proclamation reminding drivers it is against the law to be on your phone. The mayor of San Antonio proclaimed April 7th, 2022 as Safe Driving Day and issued them a proclamation. I don't know if they brought it, but they've worked partnered with District 9 Councilman John Courage to develop a plan to remind drivers not to use cell phones while driving. In addition, these club students advocate year-round to remind drivers to make smart choices and be good examples to passengers. Melinda Cox, who founded it and sponsors this club, stated that day that we need your help in reaching more people with this message. The mission started at Johnston, but it does not end there. Accidents will always be part of the human conditions, but car crashes are preventable. So, Ms. Cox, thank you so much for what you've done over the last 10 years to help promote this. Thank you for growing the club of students. It's really, it's awesome to see these student leaders come out and try and affect change and advocate. I've been with you at the Capitol advocating, and I just want to thank you so much for your passion for this and for instilling that in your students, because they've done an amazing job. So I know we have a few students here. If we can bring them forward, we'll take a picture. Yeah.
So what would you start?
All right, ready? Look right up here. One, two, and one more.
Come on.
Thank you.
Congratulations, guys. You're welcome. Great job.
Item 7, matters from the floor. The trustees welcome comments from members of the public during this time of the meeting. Generally, board members do not respond to public comments during the meeting, although members may request further information or a future agenda item on a matter raised during public comment. As explained fully in the board's written procedures for this time, the matters from the floor portion is a limited public forum. Accordingly, speakers may present on a topic related to district business for up to 3 minutes, but are not permitted to make 1, personal complaints about an individual staff or board member that should be raised using the district's grievance policies, 2, a personnel action, 3, a student disciplinary matter, 4, a complaint about a particular student, 5, or pending litigation. If you signed up to speak on a specific agenda item, it will be called at the time that the board reaches that item. Any person who persists in speaking on these topics after being directed not to do so will lose the remainder of their time to speak and may lose their privilege of addressing the board at future meetings. We also welcome written comments at any time, either through email at board@neisd.net or by mail, care of the superintendent's office at 8961 Tesoro Drive, 6th floor, San Antonio, Texas, 78217. Ms. Huey.
Number 1,
Good evening.
Good evening.
How many minutes do I have? 3, 4,
3.
5? 3. Thank you. Okay, my name is Bruce Proctor. I'm a minister here in the city and certainly have concern about our young people. And I'm going around to different school boards and just making a speech on this issue of CRT. And I'm not assuming that you are advocating that. I know it is getting around, so I just want to make a comment on it and why I don't feel it should be in a public school, that it is detrimental. So I'm just going to read what I have. CRT is a worldview. From my in-depth studies, it's rooted in Marxist ideology, which is antithetical to a constitutional republic and therefore un-American. Yet the students are taught to believe and accept it as being beneficial for America, and this is certainly not true. Excuse me. It wrongly assumes that all white people are bigots who oppress all non-whites by advocating white supremacy and implementing systematic bigotry. I'm avoiding the word racism, but bigotry in all facets of American society. The term systematic racism is variously defined and not clearly substantiated. If it means oppressing black people, then why are there so many successful black politicians, educators, doctors, lawyers, police chiefs, entertainers, athletes, businessmen and women, and recently a black president? Furthermore, why are black communities and neighborhoods in America disadvantaged while under black leadership? CRT promotes victimology, especially among black people. To constantly instill victimology in our young blacks is oppressing them and imposing on them low self-esteem. It gives them no motivation to progress, but to maintain a low status of themselves in life, and in many cases they blame other people for their problems, especially white people. That's dead wrong. CRT also teaches equality of all values, social and economic statuses, academic and athletic performances, and all other human capacities. This is a subtle way to promote the means of socialistic measures to reach the ultimate goal of communism, which communism is just is not real. It'll never, ever happen. There'll never be equality across the board. Lastly, CRT is based on a false premise, which amounts to a negative and destructive propaganda. This will only hurt, not help, our public school students. They deserve better as they develop into adulthood. And Frederick Douglass once said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." And unfortunately, CRT aims at breaking the children who will have little hope of being repaired in the future. So it needs to be kept out of the public schools. I don't know if my time is up, but I say this as a black man and also as a Christian. Jesus is my Lord, and I feel like all of us, different ethnic groups, if you're not a Christian, you're still a part of the human race. And I think all of us ought to be united and stand against anything that divides us.
Sir, that's your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Number 2?
Hi, my name's Luke Rosenberger. I'm a resident in Mr. Byers' district. April is School Libraries Month, so in recognition, I'm here to implore you to never again allow this board's authority to undermine the solid educational work performed in any ISD's libraries. At last month's meeting, Dr. Micah attempted to draw a distinction between book challenges and the district's recent review, which he portrayed as a standard review for educational value and age appropriateness within the scope of this board's authority. As professional educators, one would expect such board-sanctioned activities to be based in the best available sources and methods in pedagogy and child psychology. But as we know, the basis for this year's review was in fact a list that had none of those qualities and was generally acknowledged as a haphazard, slipshod mess. It had no apparent grounding in any pedagogical principle. It included duplicate titles. It included translated titles while omitting their originals. It even included at least one non-existent title. Most egregiously, it included absolutely no explanation of why any of those 850 individual titles was included in the list in the first place. Despite the lack of educational rigor, that list was used as the basis for a months-long effort undertaken by any ISD school librarians, perhaps under perceived duress, in a voluntary and valiant attempt to salvage some shred of educational legitimacy from the jaws of farce. Instead of improving the quality of any ISD's library collection, this reactionary review took your librarians' focus away from the actual educational development needs of their campuses for months. So in recognition of School Libraries Month, I'm here to implore you to never do that again. Please ensure that any future review undertaken in this board's name employs sources and methods that reflect the best available evidence in pedagogy and child psychology. And most importantly, please always allow your librarians to do their jobs and empower them to do so effectively. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's all.
Thank you. Item 8, matters from executive session. A, personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments pursuant to Government Code Section 551.074. 1, possible action regarding routine personnel including but not limited to administrative appointments. A, Executive Director of Finance and Accounting. Do I have a motion to approve as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leos. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Item B, Executive Director of Transportation. Do I have a motion to approve as discussed in executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Williams. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. No introductions? Okay. Item 9, presentations. A, update on the district scorecard process. Dr. Micah.
Thank you, Madam. I'm sorry. This oak pollen is getting to me. Thank you, Madam President. I would like to ask our Executive Director for External Relations, Ms. Deb Caldwell, to come to the microphone to give you an update.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests, we're bringing to you a very brief update on the district scorecard process, which you began in January. In January, you worked on those first 2 columns, thinking as a district and as a board what our priorities and objectives should be, leading us forward. We're calling this a scorecard because it'd be something to measure us by in the future, and your work was the beginning of that at that January 4th meeting. The other 3 areas will be developed by district staff in the future as we move through the process. In February, you expanded on those objectives. We asked you, what is it not, and why is it important? You went through T-chart exercises, what is it not, and you gave us your feedback for each of those areas, each of those objectives. That feedback will give us direction as we go out to our community and talk through what the vision is for that district scorecard. So we will gather public input. We need to do a check mark with them to see are we on the right track before we go too far down in the development of that plan. So that we'll do a survey both in English and Spanish. It will be online, but we'll also have a paper version that we can hand out at community meetings that can be scanned in, and those results can be shared that way for folks who might not be comfortable with the technology piece. We're having presentations to neighborhood groups and other groups. We actually already have some on the schedule. We're going to be meeting with the Northeast Neighborhood Alliance this month, our ALEAR, our Adults Learning and Retirement. Many of those are Northeast residents. We also will be presenting the information to our Student Voice whole group later this month, and we have some others that we're also working on. So the idea is that we would present to our community what that beginning stage of that plan is, give them an opportunity to provide feedback through the survey, either again scanning a QR code and getting to an electronic survey or having a paper copy for them for those presentations. Focus groups would give us an opportunity to do a deeper dive on the survey results that we get back. There's open-ended options in the survey, so if we are confused by anything that our community has said, the focus groups would give us an opportunity to do a deep dive. What do you think it was meant by if a community member responded or members responded in a certain way? The focus groups also let us hone in on language that's understandable. So as we are communicating as a district what our outcomes are, does our community understand what CCMR is? How can we make those acronyms that we use all the time, college, career, military readiness, in a very attainable, accessible objective that our community will understand and can measure us by? The focus group process will help us to do that. So what does that timeline look like? Well, tonight we're presenting to you on these next steps. Later this week, we hope to have a soft launch of the survey. I say soft because we're still in the process of translating it into Spanish. It's a lengthy document. We want to make sure we get that right. So we're looking at soft launch this week and keeping it open until the end of April. We want to make sure folks have adequate time to respond. Then from that feedback, we can start to draft some language to really hone in on what those performance objectives are. So taking y'all's work already and what we get back from the community, really starting to hone in on that. Then we can get feedback from our stakeholders, including cabinet, presenting to you guys what those community results were, what those statements were of priority from our community, those performance objectives, and getting your feedback. You know, do you agree? Is there something that needs to change moving forward? And then we would move forward into focus groups. You would ultimately potentially take action at the June meeting on those priorities and performance objectives, those first 2 columns of the plan, and then district staff takes over those other 3 columns to finish out the scorecard. Our hope would be to debut it at summer leadership so that all of our staff leaders across the district could have a preview into how that's going to lead our work moving forward. And then we would present to you ongoing throughout the school year on the progress to those objectives. But it's very important to note that this is all tentative. As Dr. Micah has told me numerous times, the timeline shouldn't drive this. The process should drive it. And that's hard for a planner like me who wants everything to hit a deadline. But we really want to make sure that the process is responsible to our community. And if any of parts of these take longer, if we feel like the survey needs to be open longer, for example, because we haven't gotten as much feedback as we want, we will keep it open. But for your purposes, we wanted to provide you a tentative time frame so that you understand what our next steps are after your initial work, so that you know that we are still making progress to an end goal and to a district scorecard. But the process will decide how we continue to move through these steps, not a deadline. Dr. Micah, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, but I do want to let you know that as this process plays itself through, my goal is to bring you an update each month because, again, it's important that you all know where in the process we are and that if for some reason it's taking longer, that we can come to you and explain here is the why. So that you are well informed throughout this as we go on. Okay? Do you have anything else, Ms. Caldwell?
No, I am finished. I'd be happy to take questions.
Anybody have questions?
I just have one question. Am I on? There we go. I just have one question. The survey, is it beneficial to have our community to be able to write their name and number and email? So if there is that follow-up, instead of having someone kind of guess what that response might have meant, to just reach out and ask them. Is that an option?
We certainly at times have collected information, can we contact you for further information and add that opportunity there as an optional. I'd be happy to look at it and talk about it with Dr. Micah and our research team.
Look, if you all think that's beneficial, I have no problem with it. Adding in that here's some contact information.
I just worry about when you're, I was in a situation where we were kind of doing, everybody gave input and that person wasn't there. So we were all trying to figure out what they were actually meaning, saying, and it turned out we were completely wrong. So I'm a little hypersensitive about, well, why don't we just ask?
Well, if they want to provide it, they can.
I mean,
it's not like it's mandatory.
No, not mandatory, but optional for certain.
Okay.
Anything else?
You can go first, Mr. Brown. I'll go after you.
For the present, well, first of all, thank you for bringing this to us and reminding us that the timeline does not need to drive this. Because I think this is too important, and we, the 7 of us have spent a lot of time going through this, and I think it's important for the focus groups, the stakeholders, the public to spend the time going through this as well. And so I would really, with the survey, I guess one comment is, yeah, let's not rush that. And with the public meetings and presentations, my request would be to try to get as evenly across the 7 single-member districts as possible. There might be some overarching organizations that cover multiple, but let's do our due diligence on this and explain to people what the scorecard is and what it's meant for and what the purpose is. So, and I guess the last thing is actually a question so far. I've just made statements. The survey. So we're developing the survey in-house.
Yes. So
Okay.
I've been working with the research team and Dr. Gibson and Dr. Micah to develop that research tool that we would be using.
And the next question was, Dr. Gibson involved in that, considering he's gone through this?
Yes.
So
he has been involved behind the scenes with me and Dr. Micah along the way. he is in the process of reviewing the survey, as well as Dr. Micah, and we will be kicking that off and finalizing it hopefully later this week. He and I also talked about focus groups and how that might work, what those questions might look like, his availability to help with those focus groups. We've already got some time held on his calendar for him to do that work with us as district staff. So yes, he is definitely involved throughout the process, and he just had a conflict tonight and could not be here tonight.
Sounds good. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Caldwell. Back to the survey question. I had not seen it. I'm not sure if any of the trustees have, but can we all see that? Because obviously we've talked a lot over the last multiple meetings to make sure that all the questions that are being asked, in case there's something that we need to consider. Obviously, if Dr. Gibson hopefully covers the bases, but make sure before we go out, we have all those key areas covered. The other question is for outreach. Do we do a business outreach to all the local community businesses as well beyond the HOAs? I know you do that piece, but do we have a specific business community outreach process that we have that we're going to use?
Yes, sir. So the business outreach process that I've utilized are our chambers. So we are members of the North San Antonio Chamber, the Greater San Antonio Chamber, and the Hispanic Chamber. So what I do is each of them have a newsletter that they send out to all their members. I often ask for them to include something in their newsletter to all members. Sometimes it's recruiting employers for our career fair, or sometimes it's looking for judges for a competition for our students. But I regularly communicate with them that way. I use the chambers to help communicate to businesses.
Okay. For the presentation, and we, back to Mr. Byers' point about not only covering all 7 parts of the district, but obviously for the when we did the redistricting, the actual in-person ones were lightly attended, I believe, like a handful of people.
Yes.
So is the intent to do a video presentation that we can put out on social media and out via the superintendent, the principal, et cetera? Is there a multi-pronged approach, I would assume?
Yeah, and we're still developing that of how to reach the audiences. It definitely is a challenge in getting to everybody. We feel that in person resonates a lot more. We get a better attention. So we are already looking at neighborhood alliance type meetings, those big groups that bring multiple alliances together. So for example, in your area, District 9, Neighborhood Alliance, we told them that this would be coming, and we're going to utilize their email channel and hopefully get invited to a future meeting to talk about it with them as well. We're doing the District 10 area. We're looking for other big neighborhood association groups to go and try to do as much in person as possible. Okay. A recorded message we certainly could do. Dr. Micah will, of course, talk about it in future videos, which are broadcast through social media, reach a wide audience. There'll be those sorts of opportunities, but we're trying to hit as much in person as we can.
No, I think that's great. I just know that obviously a lot of people, especially the parent part of the communities, they're usually pretty busy with their kids' activities, but if it's pushed out via Dr. Micah's superintendent message and the s'mores repeatedly, and I know we have that Northeast newsletter we send out monthly as a consideration, but just to make sure we hit them repeatedly over the next couple of weeks as we're doing this. I agree with Mr. Byer, we don't want to rush the timeline. And then for the focus groups, can you explain the process, like how many groups, who's in each group, what the composition is going to be, all of those pieces, because that's right during graduation week. I noticed 25 May to 2 June may be a very busy time to get.
Absolutely. So we're going to start talking and doing a little bit of a focus group with our student voice group this month, because we know that May gets really difficult for high school students. So we're going to start with them this month. It won't be the same focus group process. They'll have a unique process to drill down on some of their comments. And then, yes, moving forward, we are looking at residents who don't have children in school. We're looking at parents. We're looking at staff. And other students as well who maybe we didn't catch with student voice. Those are the stakeholder groups that we're beginning to look at. The actual format, Dr. Gibson and I have started talking about what would happen during that meeting, really a check for understanding, making sure, again, that what we are documenting is understandable to our community, getting their gut check on what does this mean to you when you read this statement? Are you understanding? Are you following it? And getting their feedback of what's missing. What are the opportunities to improve the statement? He has a 4-quad approach that he says he uses with focus groups, so that's one of the things that we've started to talk about in getting those 4 checks for understanding and opportunity for feedback. How many? Him and I talked about keeping it a little bit on the small side to ensure that conversation exists. we haven't nailed a magic number yet.
Okay.
I think part of that's going to determine, as we start to outreach to people saying they want to, contacting us and wanting to be part of the process. And as we reach out to those stakeholders, making sure that we have adequate representation across the districts. So I'm a little hesitant to give you a magic number that we're trying to nail on each of the focus groups, but we are trying to keep it in the small range, 25 or less, so that we can have meaningful conversation.
Okay. Maybe next month when you get the bit from Dr. Mike, if we can kind of, as y'all continue to refine that, so we know what that broad representation look like, obviously because we're a large district, very diverse district, and make sure we hear all those different voices, not all the normal players, but
Right.
some folks that maybe wouldn't day-to-day show up at certain things, but obviously have a big thing. So, okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. One of the groups that I'm always trying to reach, right, is those older senior citizens in our district. So that's challenging. That's why we think those in-person neighborhood associations might be the best way to get them. That is certainly a group we really want to hear from. So that's a big part of my focus. The good news with our communication channels that we have our parents, we have our staff that we can email and get to very quickly. But it's the other residents throughout the community that are harder to reach. Sure. And so that's really what we're trying to focus on with those in-person meetings. And then ultimately from those in-person meetings, we're hoping to meet people to invite to a focus group.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Mm-hmm. Anybody have anything else? Okay. Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
Item 10, report on required board training. A, state board rule on board member continuing education announcement of credit. Under State Board of Education rule, completing required continuing education each year of service is a basic obligation and expectation of any sitting board member. As board president, I'm required to announce the name of each member who, as of that member's anniversary of election or appointment to the board, has completed the required continuing education, has exceeded the required continuing education, and is deficient in meeting the required continuing education. There are 7 training areas for board member continuing education: local district orientation, orientation to the Texas Education Code, post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code, team building, additional continuing education, evaluating student academic performance and setting goals, identifying and reporting abuses, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. To the extent applicable to each board member, I will announce the completion or deficiency as to required training. For members who still have time remaining to complete required training, I will announce those board members who have scheduled timely training and those who have not yet scheduled the training. At the conclusion of the announcement, I will announce any board members' training in excess of the continuing education requirements. Just bear with me, this is long. Local district orientation. No board members were required to complete the local district orientation training. Orientation to the Texas Education Code. No board members were required to complete the orientation to the Texas Education Code training. Post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code. The following board members have completed post-legislative updates to the Texas Education Code training for the time period covered by this announcement: Sandy Huey and Steve Hilliard. The remaining board members will complete their training as required for the time period covered by this announcement. Team building. The following members have completed the annual team building training: Shannon Grona, Sandy Winkley, Sandy Huey, David Byer, Terry Williams, Omar Leos, Steve Hilliard. Additional continuing education. Note, it's 10 years for the first year members and 5 hours for subsequent years. The following board members have completed the additional continuing education requirements: Shannon Grona, Sandy Winkley, Sandy Huey, David Byer, Terry Williams, Omar Leos, Steve Hilliard. Evaluation, student academic performance, and setting goals. This training must be completed every 2 years. The following board members have completed the biennial training on evaluation, student academic performance, and setting goals based on the anniversary date of their last training: Sandy Huey and Terry Williams. Identifying and reporting abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. This training must be completed every 2 years. The following board members have completed training based on the anniversary date of their last training: Sandy Winkley, August 2021. The remaining board members will complete their training as required for the time period covered by this announcement. Exceeding required continuing education. Board Member Shannon Grona exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by the following additional hours, 14. Board Member Sandy Winkley exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by the following additional hours, 10. Board Member Sandy Huey exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by the following additional hours, 16. Board Member David Byer exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by the following additional hours, 5. Board Member Terry Williams exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by the following additional hours, 7.75. Board Member Omar Leos exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by the following additional hours, 0.5. Board Member Steve Hilliard exceeded the required amount of continuing education training by the following additional hours, 1. And that concludes the reporting of that. And Ms. Turner, thank you so much for putting all of this together for me. I appreciate that. Okay, item 11, new business for possible board action. A, instruction and campus administration. 1, possible action regarding 2022-2023 proposed elementary and middle school early release. Mr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Madam President, Dr. Micah, members of the board, executive staff, and guests. I'd like to ask Jennifer Gutierrez and Susan Diaz to come to the podium for this agenda item. So as they're preparing to speak, as you can recall, we adopted the 22-23 calendar for this coming year. And so during that process, after that, we've been having a lot of conversations about how will we serve our teachers, our students going into the 22-23 school year, as far as professional development as well as learning outcomes. And so Jennifer and her team and Susan have been working very hard to come up with a plan that we feel will support both our students and staff alike.
Thank you, Mr. Jarrett. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. This evening, as Mr. Jarrett mentioned, we have a proposal to add early release days to the adopted 22-23 calendar. That calendar was adopted by you in January. So we're going to begin by discussing why early release is essential to student learning outcomes. I will share the elementary plan, and Dr. Diaz will discuss middle school and high school. So we begin with our NEISD mission, which is to challenge and encourage each student, but we don't stop there. We have to also support our students to achieve and demonstrate that academic excellence. And we know that our teachers work so hard every single day to be able to support our students in achieving learning outcomes. And we feel that this proposal will allow them to be able to really focus in and work on student learning outcomes through the following bullet points. And so currently our calendar does not include early release for parent conferences. And these are extremely important as our teachers administer assessments at the beginning of the year to create a baseline and figure out where our students are and what plan of action they need to develop in order to meet students where they are. That may mean they need intervention. That may mean they need some additional reteach or some extensions. And so those plans for differentiation are really important. And it's essential to communicate those to parents early on. Additionally, we are a district that has focused a lot on professional learning communities, which builds teacher efficacy. Our teachers collaborate on a consistent basis, so this plan would really allow them some additional time to really discuss strategies that are best for our students to be able to talk about how they can share some of those best practices within their classrooms, learn from one another, and again, really discuss that analysis of data to move forward within those grade level teams. That analysis of student data, again, is so important because our teachers are doing daily formative assessments to adjust their instruction, but they also have common formative assessments in the middle of a unit. They have summative assessments at the end of units. So again, that constant conversation is really important to drive those student learning plans. And as you know, with House Bill 4545, our students who have not passed STAR 3 to 8 or end of course require an accelerated learning plan. Those plans need to be monitored on a consistent basis to ensure that we are allowing the time for students to accelerate and that they're provided the 30 hours that are needed and required. So again, it's not just creating the plan, but is also monitoring it to ensure that our students are mastering the skills that they were showing gaps in. And one final piece that is really important is at the beginning of the year, we provide training for our teachers through new teacher orientation in August and also through Curriculum Day. But that is a one-time professional learning plan that is shared. And so we would like the opportunity to have time with our teachers once a month to build some follow-up. We have STAR 2.0 that's coming, and that is a redesign of our STAR system, and it'll be really important for us to work with our teachers to provide small chunks of training. With this proposal, it would allow us to work with other departments across our division to be able to support our teachers and even our paraprofessionals on early release days to provide them with some strategies that they could go back and implement and we can follow up with during the next month. So our elementary proposal would have a total of 14 early release days. And here you can see that they're broken up. 4 early release days would be for fall and winter parent-teacher conferences, so 2 in the fall and 2 in the winter. Again, taking a look at all of our assessment data and being able to share that plan and those results with our parents. 8 early release days would be designated at the end of every month, so 1 Tuesday a month, and we'll look at the calendar in a second so you can see exactly where those fall, for the purpose, again, of that professional learning, the team collaboration, the analysis of student data, and the monitoring of student plans. The calendar that you adopted in January included 2 early release days. At the end of the school year, those 2 early release days were for allowing our teachers to close out their school year, grading, and all of the pieces that go along with closing out the end of the school year, as they no longer have a day at the end for staff development. And so those 2 days allow them to be able to do all of the things they need to do before they go out for summer break. And we wanted to also share that in the 2021-22 calendar, our current calendar, we have a total of 9 early release days, but those are spread across. And here this plan would really allows for consistency. And again, that strategic placement of those for communication with our parents and also for the professional development that we're planning to do. The monthly early release time would be 2 hours and 15 minutes prior to regular dismissal. Our schools that begin at 7:30 would dismiss at 12:30, and our schools that begin at 8 a.m. would dismiss at 1 p.m. on those days. So here you have a side-by-side. On the left, you can see the calendar that you adopted in January. And again, this one reflects the May 24th and 25th as early release days, the last 2 days of school. And on the right, you can see the proposed calendar, which, again, the last Tuesday of every month, except for December, because that's a short month, would allow for our teachers to have that early release time. You can see the 2 early release days in September on the 14th and 15th. Those would be the parent conferences in the fall. And the January 11th and 12th would be our winter conferences, as we will be administering the middle of the year MAP assessment in December, so our teachers would be able to have those results. And they do have a staff development on the 2nd to be able to analyze those results and create action plans for our students, and then be able to share those with parents. Here is a comparison side by side of the early release days this school year versus what they would look like in the proposed for next school year. So again, as you can see, we have 9 in this current calendar, but they're spread out. And so what we're proposing again is a strategic plan that would allow for consistency at the end of every month for our parents to also know that the last Tuesday of every month is an early release day for their children. Dr. Diaz?
So the middle school schedule would mirror the elementary schedule, which is going to be a little bit of a change, and I think that Mr. Jarrett will kind of speak to that in more detail, why we have chosen to align the elementary and the middle school schedules. But you'll see that, again, the calendar that was adopted, oh, sorry, was that me or you? Okay. So the calendar that was adopted was lacking in early release days. So traditionally, the middle school, like the elementary, had 4 days of early releases so they could meet with parents and have conferences. So in the calendar that was adopted, those days were missing. You'll also see that this is going to be less early release days than what they had this past year or this year, because they did have once a week. They were getting out 30 minutes early for the teachers to PLC, but what we found was that was not enough time for them to collaborate. The 30 minutes was a little bit too short. So by aligning the elementary and the middle school, it'll help the transportation needs, because the other, just the logistical situation that we fell into was we had a shortage of bus drivers this year, and so that caused some backups in the time that cut into the time for the teachers to plan. So we feel that if we align the elementary and the middle, that this will fix that situation. But the thing is, the way that this is set up with the 2 hours and 15 minutes once a month, the last Tuesday of the month, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes, pardon me, and as opposed to 30 minutes a week, which they're getting this year, so it's actually a little bit more time than they had. And so I'm going to show you now kind of what that looks like. So this calendar, again, was the one you see on your left is the one that you adopted, but it doesn't indicate those once a week early release days. The one on the right is very much mirrors the elementary calendar. So again, they'd have those 4 days for conferencing at the beginning and the middle of the school year, and then they'd have the once a month early release that's 2 hours and 15 minutes. On this slide, we've mocked up kind of what's happening this year. On the left, again, that was the once a week early release. But again, the situation that we have run into was the fact that 30 minutes really wasn't enough for them to get much done. And because of just the constraints of the transportation, it's not the transportation. It's not their fault at all that we're in the situation where we were short bus drivers, but it did cut into their planning time. So you'll see on the right, again, this is what it would look like if you compare how they're functioning this year to what we're proposing for next year.
So if I can add to that. So one of the things that we really have had a lot of conversations about is being very reflective in our practices. Sometimes you write something on paper and it sounds really good, and then it doesn't pan out like you hope. So we call that a false start. And when you have a false start, you don't just keep pushing forward. You have to sometimes regroup and rethink things through. And what we did after talking with transportation and really recognizing the fact that we're down 12% of our transportation, our drivers. With that 12%, we can't anticipate that's going to get better. So this proposal is recognizing the fact that we do have a human capital issue when it comes down to transportation. And so really what we came back and said, you know what, we got to go slow to go fast. So we regroup and then rethink things through, and then we have more conversations. As they talk about intentional action and placement of where we put the early release, placing it once the last Tuesday of a month also creates a transparency and elevator conversation for families. So if they need to make doctor's appointments, it's easy to remember the last Tuesday of the month I can do that. It's easy to remember I need to pick my kid up the last Tuesday of a month versus when you're trying to look at a calendar and say, I think this is early release day, this may not be an early release day. So that was very intentional. The last thing I'll add to it is they talk about professional learning. Sometimes we put our teachers in what I call a fire hose. We give them a lot of information at the beginning of the year. We hope it sticks, and then we may not revisit it. So with this schedule, what we're talking about is creating a virtual learning, quick learns, essentially where we have menu options for teachers to be able to click a link, they zoom in with the presenter, and they get their needs met that way. And it's an hour quick learn versus sit and get for 7 hours consistently. And so this was really trying to design something to meet our teachers' needs, our student needs, and our parents' needs with those parent conferences, because we don't want the conferences to be set up in the sense of this is what your child is doing wrong. Sometimes we need to spend some time talking about what they're doing right. And then we need to spend some time talking about here are some next steps we can do to help support your child to be successful.
And so one of the things, as Mr. Jarrett mentioned, was the fact that this year we were able to use Zoom and other kind of virtual learning environments to work with all of the teachers. We had the first Monday of the month was district-wide middle school PLC time. And so the specialist and the assistant directors and the content areas were able to do a little bit of PD with the middle schools on the first Monday of the month and the high schools on the second Tuesday of the month. But what was really great about that was kind of singletons like AP teachers or world languages teachers, where they might be the only world language teacher on their campus. We were able to set up, they were Teams links. Tom Johnston's going to be happy that I said that. So we set up Teams meetings, and they were able to come together to collaborate, and it was a really powerful experience. Just a side note on that. And then in regards to the high school schedule, because of feedback that the principals received from student groups, and Dr. Micah had met with the student leadership group too, the student voice group, and the kids all had, they loved the extra time. This schedule was very beneficial for them, and we heard that across the board in the survey that every high school did. It was about 90%. Of the kids that found this schedule very beneficial. So therefore, we wanted to find a way to get the elementary and the middle schools aligned and still allow the high schools the time that they found beneficial and they quite frankly wanted to keep. And do you all have any questions for us or Mr. Jarrett?
Any questions?
They answered you answered my question. Yeah.
Questions down? Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I thought the consistency, like you mentioned, was really good. I mean, especially for a parent who is trying to schedule, like you said, and when you put it side by side versus the early releases that were kind of random versus the consistency, I think that's good for teachers, especially teachers that are trying to work and collaborate. So I appreciate that.
And so every early release will be Tuesday instead of Monday, Tuesday. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you got one question.
Tuesday of the month, right? The last Tuesday of the elementary, middle?
Yes, and then high school is each Tuesday for the last 48 minutes or so, they're early released. And to echo something that Dr. Diaz talked about, the student voice kiddos, and if you high school kiddos take on a lot of advanced courses. Many of those kids are burning off both ends of the candlestick, and they're involved in extracurricular activities. So that one day is the one day for them to be a kid and take care of themselves as well. And so I know a lot of the kids really appreciated that.
Just had one question, and I was reading in the action item. I heard about the kids like it in the high school level in particular, and the teachers. But what about the mass parents? There's a lot of parents that I know, and I have a high schooler, that it's a challenge because it's weekly and they have jobs and responsibilities. And there doesn't sound like there was any significant besides maybe the CIC, which is a small group. But we have thousands of working parents and guardians. And did we solicit any input from them and their feedback on this because of the impact this year, what it's been to them? Because I've heard some people, it's created challenges because half the high school kids don't drive or take the bus.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Mr. Hilliard. I don't think anything we've created is 100%. And so what is difficult to create a survey where you're getting feedback is you have to put two options on the table for folks. And really what we were kind of trying to listen to is the fact of, are these kids healing and taking care of themselves? And so we did take it to the DEIC, and 100% of them agreed with the thinking. It doesn't mean that we can't continue to solicit information and feedback from our families to make sure that we're meeting their needs. That's been the biggest challenge through this whole course in action is how do you create a system that provides people time to do their job, but also be respectful of the fact that parents have jobs of their own. And so it's really trying to strike that balance. And I don't have the absolute answer. I mean, we can get more feedback and do percents, but that was kind of our thinking right there.
Okay, well, I would encourage to continue to get the parent feedback because they are our customers, via their children they send to us, and they have the responsibility to get them to and from, and everyone is different, and you can't make everybody happy, but at least the engagement so they know on the front end, and then obviously we have to make decisions, and there's practicalities with logistics and stuff, but getting that broad-based parental input, I think.
And Mr. Hilliard, one other thing I'll just add, part of what you said is exactly one of the reasons why I talked about this, you got to go slow to go fast, and sometimes you have a false start. I think, trying to do middle and high and then running into a 12% reduction in staff and transportation, I think that created some extra frustration and really the flow of getting the high school kids home at a more reasonable time and different things like that. So I think we're being very reflective, and I think that feedback is valuable, and that's something that we'll continue to have conversations with our families about.
Great, thank you. Thank you. That's it, Madam President.
Did you want?
For the early release days, kind of piggybacking on Mr. Hilliard's question, we do kin. Does that usually extend then to those early release days for the families? That
Yes.
Yeah. So. Regardless of what time the school ends, they start at dismissal time. Okay. And then for the middle school, especially because I know previously the early release was 30 minutes every Monday. For extracurriculars, because they are getting into that, or is the district giving schools guidance on how to handle that, or is each school going to leave it up to their own to do after school athletics, band, that kind of thing?
We'll work with them. One of the reasons why we also chose Tuesdays, because that's the lowest impact, but we will work with schools and come up with a more consistent pattern. Early release is not something new, so I know schools have worked through that, but again, to Mr. Hilliard's point and yours, I think it's just important that now what, and I think we just have to continue conversations. And I need to add this too, even though we have this calendar, one thing we have to keep in mind, this may be amended, because we still don't have the state testing schedule. So although we're saying the last 2 days of the month, that still can come out, and then we have adjustments there. So we're kind of on this shifting sand on a daily basis, but we're going to adjust and be flexible and communicative with our families. But yes, we'll work with our athletic office as well to make sure that athletics and extracurricular aren't penalized.
And Mr. Jarrett, I know you all mentioned it in here, but I think it begs talk or discussing it further, is House Bill 4545 and its impact on what we may experience next year, because we've been granted a lot of grace this year, but they're still trying to figure that out as well.
Yeah, good point. And they just recently released, they're not going to give us any grace next year. The expectation is for it to be 100% implemented. And this year they gave us a lot of flexibility. The ask is that we essentially are giving 30 hours and a parent can ask for a 1-to-3 ratio. And so as we continue to get asks coming from the state, we're constantly having to design systems to be able to meet everybody's needs and not just one entity or the other. But I think it's just still important to have that collaboration and partnership with all parties involved, and we'll be doing that.
Well, I think that the comparison for each one from last year to this year, or the proposed this year, is helpful, because you look at it, middle school, you have less overall days that you're getting, even though you're getting out earlier, it's only one, other than what they did last year. It's only, or this year, it's only one day a month. Then high school's not changing. Elementary seems to be the largest change, that we're adding those extra days. But overall, it's not like we're doubling or tripling the days off for people. So anyway, that was it.
Okay.
Okay, just one follow-up to Mr. Jarrett. The House Bill 4545, approximately how many students total are in that percentage-wise? I mean, big picture-wise, that have that full 30-hour requirement next year that may be no grace period. Do you have a ballpark percentage?
I can make an educated guess. So if you take our percent of pass rate, and on an average, let's just say we have a pass rate of district-wide of, say, 92% in a subject area, that means that other 8% we will have to carry as a whole district. So each teacher each campus could have between 20 kids all the way up to 200 kids. It just depends on the site and location. And so that's why I said it's constantly trying to design and really come up with a system that don't burn our teachers out, because it's saying you have to do this and so we're trying to take that and put some time into the day for them to do that. And I'll be remiss if I didn't recognize that we By adopting a 180-day calendar as a district, we essentially added minutes to the instructional time of the school year for every single kid in Northeast Independent School District. Average about 90,000 plus minutes as a year. The state requires 75,600 minutes. We go above and beyond that by having essentially a calendar that exceeds that expectation. And even with this, I think it puts us at about 78,200 minutes or so that will be actually still instructionally given kids, even with these early release days and times.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve the 2020-2023 early release days as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you both. Item 2, possible action regarding proposed 6 to 12 grade magnet in collaboration with NASA for Space and Engineering Technologies Academy redesign. Mr. Jarrett.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Mike, members of the board and staff, I would like to ask Dr. Munoz to come to the podium to address this agenda item.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Micah, executive staff, and guests. Tonight, we are very excited to share with you our proposal for an ETA and KSAT reorganization. It's up for consideration tonight. So before we go through the reconsideration process, we wanted to give you a little bit of history. So we're going to start with KSAT. It was founded in 1998. It started with a rocketry program with engineering and technology-based CTE courses, honors core curriculum, along with high school credits. And that pretty much laid the foundation for ETA. And so ETA was then founded in 2003. It was a STEM-focused campus. It was a campus, a school within a school, if you will, with college-level curriculum and prep program. And it also had CTE organization opportunities and had engineering and related technologies to their curriculum. So before we started looking at the possibility of reorganizing and what types of consideration we would give to this reorganization, we had to look at what they currently had. And if you look at this side by side, you see the disconnect automatically. You see you have cybersecurity, you have information technology, engineering at the KSAT side, but then ETA, it kind of changed a little bit. And so in order for us to be able to create an aligned pathway that we have in some of our other magnet programs, we were then looking at the possibility of not only integrating something new, but then also having that 6 through 12 alignment. So when we were redesigning this program, we had to create a pretty substantial vision that would help carry this program to infinity and beyond, right? So if you look at STEM education is derived from a deep curiosity of what could be, a space engineering, aeronautical, and transportation design program with a STEM focus will allow us to create a student-centered learning environment that fosters a curiosity for evidence-based solutions. Because of the varied career opportunities available to the next generation of students, we must design and create programs of study for careers that do not exist today, which is very challenging. However, when we were looking at why the importance for a redesign, we had to take a couple of things into consideration. One of the things that we were able to see was that we needed to have an increase in enrollment in this particular magnet pathway. And then in order for us to be able to create a magnet pathway that would basically look at student interest, parent interest, we also had a survey that went out, and I'll share those results with you shortly. So when we looked at that, we looked at aligning the 6 through 12 pathway between ETA and KSAT. We wanted to also align further to college programs because we don't want to have kiddos prepare for programs that are not offered in the post-secondary setting. So we have to have that in mind as well. Then we're looking at the integration of CTE pathways and hoping to ensure that at least 100% of our kiddos that are in magnets are leaving with an industry-based certification in that field. And then also making sure that we have a rigorous academic and CTE coursework embedded along with future opportunities in the workforce as well. So on average, as you can see the enrollment analysis there for each of the programs, ETA and KSAT, right below, as you can see, Data High School and STEM High School was they had much more enrollment in this particular case from this last 3-year average. And then also KSAT as well for the middle school data and STEM middle school also had a significant growth within these last couple of years. And so we had to really look at what we had available to us and then what we could bring to the table to help increase enrollment for those two programs. So when we were looking at sending out a survey, we wanted to be able to give parents and students the option of being able to select as many responses as possible because we really wanted to see exactly where their interests fell. And so looking at the results, we're looking at close to about 50%, between 40 and 50% we're looking at computer science, aeronautical engineering, robotics. So those fields right there already were part of the groundwork that we were doing in the research that it's been months in consideration. So looking at the surveys and how they came through, we saw that there was a significant interest in space travel, space engineering, so on and so forth. Parents as well. We also saw in student competitions, which is on the right-hand side, we saw that students also want to be able to not only participate in these programs, but also want to compete in these types of programs too. So we were looking at UIL, different types of student competitions that are part of this, that could easily weave themselves into what the students are already currently going to be doing as part of this program. So that's a nice visual of where we are heading, just to kind of give you some background. And one of the things that we also wanted to let you all know is that we were also looking at industry demands as we were looking at this possibility for a new program. This basically says 7,800 aerospace engineers are going to be needed within the next few years. However, I know that that's probably going to double, if not triple. And so ultimately, when we started talking about this particular program, we said, how can we further prepare our kids so that way they're a competitive force when it comes to participating in these types of career fields? And so looking at that, that again is changing, especially in the state of Texas, as you all know, with Elon being here. But we also know that we have to further prepare our kids for the opportunities that are going to be there in the future. As I had mentioned before, we're looking at aligning all of these post-secondary degree plans. Everything that we are doing now and we want to lay the groundwork for is going to then be very much a part of these very competitive universities that we have listed here, that are very much geared toward computer engineering, aerospace engineering. We're looking at very specific type of engineering that is tied to aerospace. And so we want to be able to give our kids a seat at the table. And so by giving those opportunities for dual enrollment, on-ramps, AP coursework, designing that to fit with industry-based certifications, and then it ties to hopefully acceptance to one of these great universities, and there are more, then we could then secure that acceptance into those programs in the future. And so if you look here, we're looking at starting a lot of the principals courses in middle school. And then we wanted to lay that pretty much a pathway so that you can have a visual of what, let's say, the principles of applied engineering would go to. And then also what type of industry-based certification that would lend itself to in the future. And so kiddos would have the option of doing aerospace engineering, aviation, manufacturing, or computer science. And then some of those courses could also be used as a language other than English, which is the LOT requirement at the bottom that you see. And those courses have a little asterisk by it. So as we were doing our research, we actually were able to have a really, really wonderful conversation with NASA. NASA has proposed a potential partnership with our district to have, and I would like to quote the person who we're working with. He said it's going to be a program unlike any other that he's seen in the state, which we're very proud of. One of the things that he really wanted to bring to the table is the fact that it could be part of a highly focused program model where we would include an instructional coach that comes directly from NASA. And then not only that, providing kids the opportunity to go to NASA to participate in camps. And then also they would integrate project-based learning opportunities for a cross-curricular component so that way your science teachers, math teachers, ELA, social studies could be part of it. And this is basically just one of the options that we were given. And then again, it does have all the information that comes with this particular choice, if this is something we would want to do. Again, it would be a program unlike any other, so he is very interested to hear what exactly we would like for our kids, and they could then go back and tailor make a potential plan for our district. So part of this would include job-embedded professional development through instructional coaching. It would be a co-teaching and modeling support. The person would be on site. They would be working with our middle and high school to ensure that we are launching correctly and that it's something that is going to not only start, but we can also continue to have a very, very strong program for years to come. We also have the possibility of teacher externships, which are very exciting because then our teachers actually get to go and see what their course, maybe in 7th grade science, how does that come to fruition for a potential aerospace engineer student when they're going out there into the actual field. So they'd be able to see that as well. And then we'd have virtual STEM events. In some cases, we would be able to bring astronauts virtually to our students who would have conversations with them, talk to them about their future, everything that, all the opportunities that they would have. And then again, they'd be able to participate in some of those NASA-driven events. And they would go as far as to also create, hopefully, a newsletter for us. And that's something we would definitely want to share with our community, put on every type of social media platform that we could think of, because I think it's something that's really, really important. If you see Houston ISD there, they're one of the few to have a program that's integrated with NASA. But again, it looks different than what we would have. And we could definitely get those translated and showcase all that information out to all of our community. This is a sample of what the graphic would look like. We want to include student voice in the development of this graphic. This would be something that would be all over the school. We would have the logo, the NASA logo, in lots of our shirts, the signage, everything that we could possibly get our hands on to try to integrate that particular graphic to showcase, you know, the aerospace engineering program. And again, this would be part of the front of the school, and it would be embedded in the school all over the halls and everything. So part of the proposal for the 6 through 12 program is we would have the manufacturing, mechanical engineering. Those are all certifications that can be earned in these programs. In the computer science engineering, aerospace engineering, and aviation technology engineering. And like I had mentioned before, these are all tied to CCMR, and they're part of the TEA required list of industry-based certifications. So our proposal for the administrative structure for Ceta, we're looking at currently there is a vacant allocation for a director. They would now oversee 6 through 12. It would be a middle and high school program. The primary station would be Roosevelt High School. They would work directly with Roosevelt and Kruger administration. And then we would have a Ceta Middle School Assistant Magnet Director. That's current vacant allocation as well. And they would be allocated to Kruger and work collaboratively with Kruger and Ceta students. And they would also work in collaboration with NASA and that partner as well. So our possible magnet program name would be Space and Engineering Technologies Academy, which is Ceta for short. And so for consideration tonight, we are bringing the possibility of realigning KSAT and ETA as a magnet program, restructuring the program pathways, the renaming of this particular program. We kept the ETA, but we added the space to the ETA for that. And then also having that administrative realignment and also the NASA partnership. And both Mr. Misseldine, my senior director for CTE, and myself are here to take any questions that you all may have.
Questions?
First of all, it's so exciting. Let me go back to all the beautiful pictures. No, it's great, and I'm really looking forward to these opportunities. On the universities, you had A&M, Texas Tech, and University of Texas. Would that be also specifically UTSA, or are you talking the whole University of Texas system? Because I know UTSA being right here, and they do have some pretty great programs there already.
Yes, they do. And so part of it was just to give some Texas universities, big name universities that they do have sister schools throughout the state. And so definitely if it's something that they could do here, we're going to obviously push that because it's a local opportunity for our kiddos. But we are doing our research for a lot of other programs throughout the state. So hopefully we'd be able to add a little bit more. There's many more to that list that we could definitely add. But when you're looking at the engineering pathways and anything having to do with like a computer science, much of the prerequisite coursework is the same. And so if they start with UTSA and decide to transfer to another university, they have the opportunity for the dual enrollment here at the high school so that they would carry through. Like we have on-ramps that ties to the UT Austin system, and so they would possibly even get those credits at UTSA. They could possibly get those credits at Texas A&M. So that's what we're trying to see and research all of those big name programs so that way our kids have that opportunity to join. So
Sounds great. And of course, I'd be very remiss if I didn't say, can you look at U of H also, University of Houston? I think they already have an affiliation with NASA.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
and I know they have a strong engineering program too, so.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not too far away either. Okay, thank you. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
I do like the restructure of the middle school and high school academic programs. I didn't recognize how, and I hate to use, I mean, there are current programs, they're great programs, but when you see them on paper, you can see where there's not a bridge. And so I'm happy to see that there will be a bridge. So I know this is all speculating, but should everything go forward? So are we looking to it where the current students that are in ETA would finish their program and then the Ceta students would start similar to ICSI, where they would start as freshmen? Actually, no, freshmen in sixth grade, or would it start in sixth? How would that work?
Yes. So
All the above.
everything you're saying, I'm going to put it together. Yes, essentially we would start with the lowest common denominator, which would be your incoming ninth grader and your incoming sixth graders next year. And so what we don't want to do is exit any child. But one of the things is all of our programs already had the strands. We're just tightening it up a little bit and giving more clarity to clear outcomes. So, but yes, to your point, it will start with the incoming ninth grade and sixth grade.
Okay. Yes, and so again, is any process with our magnet programs, there would be an application and
They're going to follow the same application that we would for all of the magnets. I think this is the first year that we were able to consolidate some of those applications. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, so it would be the same magnet application process, and we already have kind of established, if you notice, the data program runs 6 through 12, the STEM program runs 6 through 12, so we would be following the same guidelines through the magnet process. And that's kind of the reason why we use those as kind of our reference points of data, is because you can really see how connecting that 6 through 12 really makes that strong program all the way for students, just as simple as the enrollment in those programs.
Okay. And then my last question, rebranding, I guess you'll come to us to talk about what that looks like as far as a budget. I mean, it's always great to have a partnership, somebody come in that says, we would love to sponsor that for you, but, recognizing that there are 2 campuses and the rebranding that, goes along with that and the finances that go along with that,
So one thing I'll say, part of the creativity is keeping things simple by making it Ceta versus, something else. Essentially, it allows us to add an S to what we're doing.
Very nice.
Now, of course, Kruger's a little different. Of course, they don't have as much, signage as much as the high school because it's much larger. But essentially, we tried to maintain the past too. That was extremely important to us. And then when we met with all the middle school teachers, and they were on board. And so we took our time and really listened. We put QR codes to get feedback. And so I don't see it being costly, but that will be something. We didn't want to go down that road until we brought the idea to you guys for moving forward.
And Ms. Winkley, it's important to note, this isn't like a brand new program. Mm-hmm. This is letting one program fade away and a new program take hold. So when you talk about rebranding, this doesn't have to happen next year. In fact, I'm going to discourage any type of that because we need to honor the kids that are in ETA right now and we can't come in a race like they're not there anymore, right? So we have a lot of time to look at that. the cost for that, I just don't foresee very expensive. I just, it's not a building. It's within the school. And even when you go to Roosevelt High School, other than in their hallway, there is really no signage other than that. So, we don't have to put up a big sign and all sorts of stuff.
Well, and we have a lot of creative and very talented artists, as we all know, in our school district, and I think it would be lovely to see futuristic artwork on our campuses that are created by our current art students and former art students. I think we have one at Thousand Oaks painting a mural, actually, a former MacArthur graduate in Thousand Oaks. So we can cross over into fine arts. I've got it all worked out.
Yes, I like to have a spaceship that. This is like so exciting, okay? Actually, I'm a Star Trek fan. I think it should be called
nice.
Space, the Final Frontier.
There you go.
Okay, just think on that for a minute. Okay. I have a question on the slide that speaks to survey results, and I apologize if you mentioned this, but I've been taking a lot of notes. So on that slide, under coursework and student competitions, you have parent responses. So what types of survey questions were the parents asked?
So, and that, I think, Justin, you can answer that question better because he worked with Alex Vardell in creating that survey, so.
Could you pull that up, that slide, so everyone can see it, please?
It's way back. There we go. Sorry.
One more. So we mirrored this after the same survey that went out for ICSI, but we condensed it. When we looked at it, ICSI, there was a bunch of options. I think having some new administration at the time, we were looking at really kind of all of the magnet programs. So when we sent out the coursework or the questions for this one, it really kind of focused around everything to do with some of what we're already doing and some of what we're asking to implement. So the aerospace, the computer science, and then we really also explored that health science area as well. So most of the questions revolved around health science opportunities, some of which we already have in the district, not necessarily at a magnet. And then a lot of the same things that we're doing right now at ETA and Roosevelt with the realignment piece included. Does that make sense?
But
so they were health science questions, and then aerospace engineering, rocketry. Those were the options. And really it was, would your students be interested in participating in this type of coursework? And then there was a bunch of options for the student or parent to choose. They could choose as many as they wanted. And then beyond that, they actually ranked those options. And we did the same thing for the student competitions.
Okay, so the students were asked one set of questions and the parents were asked a different set of questions?
It was the same set of questions, just slightly different wording as it went out to the student audience and to the parents.
Okay,
So,
I guess I'm trying to understand if we had the parents choosing for the students or the students actually choosing for themselves.
Students got to choose those responses, and then we also sent it to the parents to choose for their students. There was 2 different sets of data.
Okay.
So, Miss Williams, here's the thing, is one, what I've learned through all of this, right, is a student may not even know some of these because they've never been exposed.
Mm-hmm.
All right? So we needed to, one, see, do students even understand these offerings? All right? And then 2, then to go and ask a parent, because does the parent know about that as well? Right? Correct. Because as we're looking, and look, we're looking at all our CT programs. Because one, through CCMR, some of them don't even have any merit to them. The agency doesn't even recognize them as good programs, because the question becomes, and this is really what's in my head lately, is the goal of these programs, are they about just providing interest to students, or should they lead to high demand, high paying fields? Right? Because we can offer lots of things that kids enjoy, But if it leads them to nowhere, is that really where we want to put behind, right? So in looking at aerospace, you all know I went up to SA to DC. I was fortunate enough to speak with some really talented and very bright folks in this space. And one large corporation, one of the largest in the world, has 54% of their people retiring. Their retirement age. They have no idea. And as I listen to them talk about what they're needing in students, and then to think about the paying jobs in this field, it's incredible. You have, you mentioned Elon Musk, but look, folks, Jeff Bezos is here as well, right, from Amazon. And you look at the industry in Texas, the way that it's exploding. These are high demand, high paying jobs for kids. And that's the beauty of this, is we're not taking... we don't have to buy anything, right? The buildings are there, and we even have the teachers and the folks. And so, Ms. Williams, this, if you'll recall with ICSI, we didn't have kids interested in it, which was one way for us that we had to go out and tell people, because we realized people don't even understand cyber. So we have a lot of work to do. In this case, what we can see is the work may not be nearly as heavy because people understand these areas and their necessity. Does that make sense?
It does.
So it helps us with going out and really talking to students and talking to families and that, because when it comes to cyber, we've done a lot of work educating people. We must have done well, though, because Dr. Munoz was on a Zoom or a Teams or something. Sorry, Tom. Not sure which one it was. With some families from D.C. in the military that found out about ICSI and called down because they're shopping schools, and after speaking said, yeah, we want to be a part of that because that's what we're looking for. So we know that piece, and so that also helps us in knowing how to go out and recruit students, because as you heard Mr. Misseldine talk about, or I'm sorry, Dr. Munoz, we've seen a fall off in enrollment here. So we know where our work is.
Okay.
Does that help?
It does. And just quickly on the next slide, if you could.
It's okay. Oh. The next one?
No.
Okay.
If you could add the Starship Enterprise, that'll
Absolutely.
be great. Okay. And then 2 slides down, the aligned post-secondary degree plans. I really agree with Ms. Hury. I noticed, Texas Tech University, real specific, although we don't see an aerospace component in Texas Tech.
I'm sorry, that was me, Miss Williams.
He's the one that requested
Red
it.
Raider over here. So I just figured, it's my alumni, so why not put it on there? But in all honesty, it was, I know, we didn't get so far down the weeds. Really, the goal was to take what one may deem as the big 3. Sorry. Sorry.
As long as A&M's on there, it doesn't matter, right?
And really just making sure that we're focused on the engineering strands. I mean, we think there's a lot of universities that align to this engineering strands that we put together. We wouldn't just stop there. I mean, the goal of it is just making sure that we're making our kids marketable and that they can be gainfully employed once they leave us and go into their future goals. And so it was me that.
And I just wanted to add also the transferability of some of these credits is also very important for us. And so we're going to constantly be researching to see if there is a change, especially in prerequisite coursework, because if we are going to be giving families the opportunity of having dual enrollment credits, we want to make sure that they can transfer them to other entities that would align specifically to this. So a lot of them are very much the same. So we're very happy about that.
Okay, well, speaking of credits, everything that's proposed in the program, just like, ETA and data, I'm assuming it's all TEA approved as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. I like seeing Counting on Catherine because that's from a reference to Hidden Figures, Catherine Johnston. And, math is also a key component in this, as well. And then on your slide that says proposed 6 through 12 CTE programs of study and industry-based certification, the second circle here, computer Oracle certified associate Java SE 8 programmer. Are we also including Cisco?
We have some Cisco at ICSI right now, so
Oh,
Cisco's
okay.
doing some of those certifications as we move into the second and third year with ICSI.
Okay, because I know a lot of companies in industry also still rely on Cisco certifications as well.
And this was what we kind of put together. We know still that we're going to need teacher input and NASA input as we build these pathways, right, with our person who's potentially on site. So these are the certifications that fit, I think, kind of as we initially look at it to start building that process. But I think there's definitely some room to tweak those as needed, to have the end result that we're looking for the students.
But Miss Williams, so I'm going to just tell you what the experts told me on my trip. They're not nearly as passionate about certifications as what we do with our kids. And what was fascinating to me as I listened to them was they mirrored what cybersecurity people told us. They need students to critically think, to problem solve, to work together, to conflict resolution, conflict management, those same type of things, because they said we can teach our kids and that hard skills, or our employees, but we can't teach them how to show up on time, how to work together collaboratively toward an outcome. And so as Mr. Jarrett and I and these folks talked, these are skills that are embedded in there. So it's like ICSI. I mean, we've created certain certifications, but in 5 years, my bet, they're going to change, just as industry changes, right? And that's, I think, the beauty of having NASA and some other folks here locally. In fact, from that trip, I've already been reached out by someone and a couple other folks. Should this move forward, I've actually asked them, I don't want to go any further with you because I don't want to waste your time unless the Board of Trustees approves our plan. And then we can sit down at the table and start to talk, because I got a call actually Miss Caldwell got it, saying, hey, we want to reach out. And I happened to be at the band parade and actually was questioned even further, Miss Caldwell, about our potential plan. So there's definitely some interest here locally.
Great.
To work with us.
Sometimes I'm still trying to show adults how to show up on time. But anyway, I'm sorry, just a couple more and I'll be done. So we're I think I heard a reference in here, and I know it's close, and maybe Houston ISD is working closer. But are we reaching out to, since they're close, Johnston Space Center?
So in part of the conversation, they are open to having our kids as well.
Okay.
And I know that there's been communication with, like we had talked about, the importance of recruiting, females, minorities, and making sure that those kiddos are exposed to all of these great programs. And so sometimes they do have to go outside of that. And so yes, definitely we went to several school districts already to go and see what kind of programs they do have. And luckily we are light years away from them. I'm just going to refer to that again, to Buzz Lightyear. But going back to what we have currently, we do have some of our middle school students doing what high school students are doing in other districts. So we have to be able to provide a cutting edge type of program, and so ultimately it's proven that our kids can definitely meet that match. So
All right. Well, thank you, and I am so excited, and don't forget
We are
the
too.
Starship
Absolutely.
Enterprise
I won't
and
forget.
Space, the Final Frontier.
Won't forget.
Anybody else?
Yes. Couple of questions. I may or may not be living this, or have been living it for the last 5 years, but I wanted to ask for the enrollment figures that you showed up or put on there. You had the last 3 years. Do we have what this current year's enrollment is? Because I thought it just went up to 2021.
It just, let me go back to that slide. So for 2021, there were 305 students. Now for application for this particular year, do we have those numbers?
I meant for 21, 22, do we have the enrollment for 21? Because I saw like KSAT actually went up from 1920 to 2021. Did it stay the same or go up for 21, 22?
KSAT's been hovering right around there.
About the same.
We're still waiting to finalize the magnet reports for this year. Part of the delay in that has been because we've had those 2 vacant administrative positions. Right. So we've had a little delay in getting the numbers in and the information in. KSAT's been about the same, but we have seen, I think we're only expecting, and of course through attrition, through grades 9 through 12, you lose students, but at last count, I think we had about 60 or 70 60 seniors expected to graduate from the ETA program. So even into this year with ETA, we have seen a loss or a drop in enrollment.
That 305 from 2021 is probably
yes, sir.
Lower than that 305 for
yes,
this
sir.
current
yes,
school year.
I'm trying to just kind of remember. There were rough numbers off the top of my head, but I think it was less than 300.
So just to kind of give you an example, some context. So ICSI applications had 342 this year. ISA had 269, where ETA was 190 on the application side. Yeah. And so there's a big variation in interest levels. And so that kind of also kind of said, you know what, we really need to kind of rethink. And I think a lot of it is there's a lot of commitment over that school that really people want to be at that part of that. But we feel like if we push the envelope a little bit, we can increase the enrollment or interest level.
Sure. And I think some continuity between those is going to be
absolutely, it definitely will help.
Critical to this, especially with the year that both of those programs have had as far as directors and you know, I think that it's going to be very helpful in that regard. So the survey, I guess is the next question I had. Who did the survey go to?
I believe it was 5th through 9th grade parents.
Okay.
And then on the student side, 5th graders, elementary students actually can't receive emails, so that went 6th through 9th grade.
6th through 9th grade, okay. And then obviously all the teacher for both high school and the middle school, I assume there were several meetings to talk about that and what got their input and thoughts.
We spent some time and kind of went over the presentation and really had dialogue. It was, you know, standing on the floor next to them, not standing on the stage. And really the goal was to have a conversation about what do they see. This is what we're thinking. We left QR codes because sometimes people are shy and they don't want to speak up in front of an audience. And so we left a QR code to collect further information about interest level concerns or issues like that. We did get some responses, I think, and really all were positive with the exception, you know, just kind of thinking, you know, what happens to the graphic design. And even with that, as we talk about data and ETA being on the campus, there is some opportunity for cross-pollination of effort, right? And so if their kids do a senior project and they're creating some kind of project, then design kids can actually do the graphic design for the model that they may have created. So we're not trying to exclude anyone. We're just trying to align programming to meet kids where they're at. And it's not to ignore adults, but I always think we're in the kid business, and so we're designing around the kids' future interests.
Sure. And so with this potentially taking effect next year, correct? Or the 22,
no.
That's what, no, that's, okay. Somebody said that a little while ago. That's why.
No,
I was
it will
concerned.
process. So this won't be able to open until 23, 24.
Okay.
We just need some time to be able to navigate all the moving pieces. So
Sure.
just like I talked about false starts, like we have a really, wrote a lot of things down, but as we're going through it, we have to make sure what's working, what's not working. And so, in fact, we wouldn't even have this conversation. And as he talked about the vision, took a long time because as we talked, I said, no, that's not pushing us to where we want to be, because without a vision of where you're trying to get to, that means you really don't know where you're going. And so we need to take our time and make sure we do this right.
And that's
so it's not next year.
I want to clarify that because that was said, I
23,
completely
24.
misheard that because I was like, wow, that's going to be quick. So because of that, in the interim though, because we do have 2 vacancies, what are we doing about those vacancies for those director positions?
So if the plan is approved tonight, essentially we would go ahead and bring those folks on board now.
Correct.
They would of course oversee those programs while they help in the design process of what Ceta will look like going forward. And so those vacancies have been there. We've had people plan as team members, and they really have stepped up, but we really want to get somebody to make a home of it and own the program, because I don't know anything about space. I mean, I've been reading so much about space. I think I'm on Star Trek, but in all reality, is really trying to figure out how to make something special, and you can't do that unless you put somebody that's going to have the closest point of influence.
Yeah, and I think that'll be critical, especially if this is voted on, or if this is approved tonight, to be able to convey that to current students and those that might be looking to apply to this. I think, one, it'll be enticing for those that might be looking to listen to some comfort to the existing students and parents, say, okay, now we have some direction
absolutely.
and somebody to rely on. For the personnel, obviously, you're still working through some of this, but do we foresee any changes in staff, like having to hire different specialties, that kind of thing, other than maybe the NASA?
No, we've met, and everyone has the credentials to teach the courses as designed, because they're all follow the engineering strand. When talking with the teachers, there was a couple of them that really got excited because computer science is a perfect example. I know that young man was really ecstatic because that's his passion. And so now it gives them an opportunity to put that application to the computer science as well. So we don't see any staffing concerns at this point because of our programming structure, and we did that on purpose because we didn't want to eliminate something that was already good in the district. We wanted to enhance it.
Good. Yeah, because I think you answered the second part of that question, like, would we have to retrain anybody? But since they all have the basic certifications or the industry certifications they need, that's great. And then obviously, to reiterate Ms. Winkley's question about cost, or your question about cost, somebody's question about cost. I mean, I know that we say there's probably not going to be a lot of cost, but I'm sure there will be cost, obviously, with possibly new software or maybe some retooling of some of the existing classes. So technology. So just be conscious of that. I think we all want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I think it's a great program, but moving into that intelligently. And then I think, yes, the last thing I just wanted to say was, from slide 1, there's a good, I think it was slide 1. If you go back to, not the title slide, but go to that one right there. And I know it's only listed on the KSAT side, but I know it's for ETA as well. But those last two on KSAT, real world skills and leadership skills, I think it sounds like what I'm hearing, there's some great opportunity to continue these project-based learnings, giving those students an experience that other middle school students might not get. I mean, that's the reason you're going to these programs, to interact with NASA, travel, shoot rockets, go visit something, do the project-based learning, those kinds of things. So I think to not lose sight of that is going to be critical. So
PBL is really the impetus for why we want to do this. We need to showcase what our kids are doing, and so this training and this coach, if we partner with NASA or even our own training, is to really create learning opportunities that's visible, so that anyone knows what our kids are capable of doing, and so that is the ultimate goal.
But I think just the fact that these students some of them get certified by NASA to launch rockets to a high altitude. I mean, these are things that 13, 14, 15-year-olds are doing. So,
absolutely.
Anyway, I think it's great. I look forward to seeing it as it progresses. So thank you.
Just 2 questions. If we partner with NASA, we locally will retain full control of the curriculum and guidance so that we can control and change. Obviously, they'll have input, but we control the curriculum. Not they will say this is what we're going to do to continue to align with the different career tracks. Is that correct?
I can answer it. That is correct. I mean, we're not. A partnership means that we're asking them to kind of be a partner with us, but they're not going to dictate and have us step outside the scope of what is expected of us from a board as well as the state of Texas. And really, I think what excites them about our ability is that we're not thinking from the lens of just a title change or something like that. We really want to go in depth and really give these kids hands-on experience tied back to engineering, and they're just helping us understand what's important from a space exploration lens.
Okay, yeah, because we want to adjust as the students' needs and the future changes. We control that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then can we go to the slide that showed the 80-20 on the NASA liaison? I'll call it for lack of a better term. I know that's not the correct term, but. That one, that one. And this is to piggyback on Mrs. Winkley, Mr. Byer. For that individual, that instructional coach model, what does that look like cost-wise? Because that's obviously 80% on the district. What would that number look like current year? Do we have a number on that?
So that right there would essentially be FTE if we approve it, and that's why all of this is a proposal. And what they would do is essentially that person would be assigned to a campus to be able to coach and work with our staff. It would be professional development, which could essentially support the development of the program. The good thing about it is that if we decide to go down this road, it's not a long-term commitment. What it could be is essentially a trainer-of-trainer model, and once your teachers are trained on the whole process, then of course you could eliminate that. But again, that is completely an option left up to us as a system if that's the road we
The question is, how much is it?
At FTE, so it's 100,000, I think it is, for a teacher unit with benefits. And
So
everything.
Northeast would pay 80% of that, and NASA would cover the other 20.
Is
that
So the 80% is actually the job placement. So I think it's a 220 days equals that 80%, and that's how many days they would be on site. The other 20%, essentially the month of July and maybe a little bit of August, they're actually back at NASA gathering that information that they would bring for the following school year.
Okay, but we would be paying for that.
Yes, it would be 100%.
Because it goes back to, obviously, if we make this permanent, the cost going forward, we have to.
It's our FTE, but as Mr. Jarrett and I have explained, this is not an ongoing FTE. This FTE is to come in, train our teachers to make certain that they understand they are certified, but there are going to be some nuances and things that they need to understand to come bring them in. And when that need has been met, then we should no longer need that position.
Right.
So it is not a Chapter 21 contract that goes on forever.
Short-term, 1, 2, 3 years, but not a long-term
Correct.
permanent fixed
That
cost
is
to the district.
correct. It is not an ongoing cost that we're going to incur. And look, the one thing that hasn't been mentioned, but not too far from us, is Port SA. And I hope, and look, Port SA has a lot of resources down there. Now, granted, it's a drive for us, but that's right in our back door with a lot of folks down there. Knight Industries. I actually had dinner with Bianca Rhodes, super talented woman. I believe she was recognized the 21 Woman of the Year, correct, for San Antonio or Texas, or I'm not sure, but she's in Knight Industry. She is a fascinating woman who's super talented, and her company, Knight Aerospace maybe is what it is. Knight Aerospace takes airplanes and converts them into portable hospitals. So we spent some time visiting with her, also with Boeing, and I can't remember Dan's corporation. Standard Aero. So those folks, again, we ended our conversation simply because I said I really don't want to. There's definitely some interest through all of them, the D. Howard Foundation, but I do not want to have discussions with those people until we had something more permanent.
Yep. Thank you. That's it, Madam President. Thanks.
Anything else?
Sorry. Go ahead. I did have just one more comment. I want to reiterate as we go through this is the communication aspect of it, to make sure that folks in the district know, what this is and what's going forward. Because I think there's, at least in my community, I've heard some folks over this last 6 months, with some of the flux that not flux, but some of the lacking the directors and that type of thing, some of the direction for both KSAT and ETA, people not knowing what's going on and what's happening, when are we getting a director, and we feel like we're not getting looked at and that kind of thing. And I know I'm a little close to it.
Yeah, just so you know too, we met with the Parent Alliance as well for ETA, and we had a whole conversation with them, went over everything, gave them the same feedback opportunity, and so I agree. I think if there is a lack of communication, then we definitely need to increase that. The challenge is, of course, we want to be respectful of you as the board and making sure that we're not over communicating something that you haven't approved and
Absolutely.
vetted.
And some of this is going from the current students and parents, making sure they know what's happening and when it's going to happen, and who is going to. I mean, you don't know who's going to be in charge of them, but at some point we'll be able to know that, and so they understand that process and
Right.
can,
And
can
again,
recognize that they're being
sure.
taken care of.
And again, because this was in the makings, is simply why we did not want to go out and hire some people.
Right.
Because hiring new administrators for the current versus the new are very different in many ways,
Right.
especially with the way that we're reorganizing it. Because this really hit home. I don't know, Mr. Byer, if any of your kids went to the magnet night we had at ICSI. It was back in, I'm not sure which year it was.
A couple months ago.
No.
No.
It was the very first time we used
Last
the empty area. And Mr. Jarrett and I were in there, and we were standing in there, and this really is when we started talking about this program. So it's years ago, 2 years ago at least, where you looked at STEM limits to STEM at Legacy. Data at Ed White, data at Roosevelt. KSAT to ETA, and even some parents in there. That was before you were in the senior director position, but even parents are like, so what is that? Because even that little bit, right, just didn't connect for people that are in a room. And again, I stated this to you all when I first took over. So many people think people are shopping for kinder, right, for their elementary. They're shopping K-12. They're looking at the strand. So it's important for us to do it. So that's some of the delay, right? I mean, we just didn't want to go out and hire somebody just to hire them and then say, oh, by the way, your job changed.
Right, and I understand that. I guess what I was hearing is that there was no information given to folks about what was happening, and not that we could tell them this is the program we're moving to, but they're in a program that doesn't have any director and didn't seem to be any support from the district to the schools as far as making sure people understood, what's happening. Hey, we can't tell you anything we can't tell you much at this point, but we're looking at this, or we're in the process of trying to find somebody to help lead this ship. And so I think going into a new program like this, sort of bridging this gap, is that we want to make sure that we're communicating that to not just the current students, but then obviously the ones that are interested going forward in this type of thing, because it is exciting, and we don't want to lose kids just because they don't know what it is or don't understand it, or we're lacking a director again or something of that. So let's just be conscious of that as we move forward and get this thing off and running in the right direction.
Terry, did you have something else?
I just want to say for everyone to remember, this is a huge step at innovation. So, I mean, all of this is about being innovative. Sometimes innovation, not sometimes, but a lot of times innovation takes some time. And it takes a lot of work. It's a process. I'm, again, so excited about this. I know you had mentioned that, we want to be, or this will be the premier program, magnet program in the state. I want to see it to be the premier magnet program in the nation. So, yeah,
No pressure.
No pressure, but let's raise the bar, and kind of piggybacking on I think an earlier question that Mr. Hilliard had. I'm not really concerned. I am concerned, but not really concerned about us controlling curriculum, because, like you said, it's a partnership, and in my mind, you have to at some point rely on the experts. I don't work at NASA. I almost got an engineering degree. I married an engineer. Okay, does that count? But they're the ones right now who knows what's needed in the industry. Who knows what's needed for that type of workforce. And, sometimes you have to trust the experts, but of course, you don't want to go too far over in that. But, at the same time, again, we do have, TEA requirements, so we don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize that. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we are producing, based on this program, what the industry needs, and who knows what the industry needs besides those that work in the industry. So, thank you.
And Ms. Williams, we'll end it like this. Two things. One, just think of ICSI and how we used industry to guide us through it. We were always going to do certain pieces, but we needed industry to kind of tell us what was relevant in that. And I'll end with this story. At the dinner I had, there was some debate among these very smart people. And I don't know, they started talking about what they put into space. It was not a satellite, it was something else, and then they bickered for a while about what that was. But they said to me, they turned and said, "Here, Dr. Micah, here's what we need. I need kids. We're already looking at workers because this thing was going to stay up in space for 40 or 50 years. They said, I don't need kids to know how to launch it. I need kids to read that data in 40 to 50 years. That's the kind of worker we're looking for." So, that just blows me that to your point, Ms. Williams, they're thinking so far off, right? And that's why I think that piece about talking about problem solving and those types of things were really their focus, not so much on, do you know how to put this bolt with this one or whichever. So there's a balance to both you and Mr. Hilliard's point, right? We're going to retain control of it, but we need to make certain that at the end, when our students come out of this program, that they're going into a high-paying, high-demand field. That's what we want. We don't want them to send into somewhere that there aren't any jobs or that they're low-paying, right? That's not helping them along the way.
And that's the end, right? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the following? Aligning current KSAT and ETA magnet programs, restructuring of program pathways, renaming both magnets to reflect Space and Engineering Technologies Academy, Ceta, administrative realignment, and the ability to partner with NASA.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Ms. Winkley. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much for the presentation and the great discussion. Item B, consent. 1, business services. A, changes to early voting locations for May 7, 2022 general election. B, waiver of penalties and interest. C, donations. D, 50,000 purchases. 2, operations. A, 2015 bond and NEEF grant funds for the Northeast Institute for Cybersecurity and Innovation facility renovations. 2, computer labs. AE appointment and construction bid delivery method approval phase 3. B, district-wide portable building relocation and related work, indefinite delivery quantity, IDQ, services contract bid award approval. C, professional services contracts, construction contracts, and related contract amendments supporting the 2015 bond, M&O, and ESSER 3 program funds design and construction requirements. 3, minutes from March 2022. 4, end of consent. Do I have a board member wishing to pull an item from consent?
I'd like to pull item B2A.
B2A. Okay.
Madam President, can I pull B1A and B1D, please?
B1A and B1D. Anybody else? Okay, so do I have a motion to approve consent without B1A, B1D, and B2A?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Winkley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hilliard. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Okay, Ms. Williams, B2A.
Excuse me. I just had a couple of questions. I was trying to find it here. I think here it is. I don't know what's my answer. So the date, I didn't really see a date that this would be completed. And are there any more upcoming projects in relation? to this?
Ms. Williams, this was the money that was raised at the NEAF Gala. It's going to build 2 classrooms, and that's all that we have in process right now. 'Cause that's all the funding that we have. There'll be plans later on as funding comes available. This will be classrooms 7 and 8.
Okay, but we don't have anything else upcoming in relation to this.
No,
All
ma'am.
These were the monies through Fund a Need. So this was brand new this year. It must have gained some traction because NEAF has asked if we would consider another Fund a Need next year.
Thank you.
Okay, so would you like to make a motion regarding B2A, Ms. Williams?
Yes, I would. So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. Okay, Mr. Hilliard, B1A.
Thank you. For the early voting location, we received a change of the dates. The dates were off a little bit, so that's been corrected. But for the posting, will the early locations also be posted on the district agenda after the meeting? I wasn't sure about that. You added them, but just wanted to make sure.
So Mr. Hilliard, I've already talked. In fact, Ms. Turner emailed me over the weekend. We did not make the changes before this evening. I just didn't like that.
Yep.
So once you all had a chance to see them and talk about them, Ms. Turner's ready to post them up there.
Okay, it'll also include all the locations as well.
That is correct. She has the update ready to go. That's me holding off to say I just didn't feel good about changing the packet before we met with you all.
No, that's great. Just thank you so much for that.
May I add that the early voting sites will also be listed on the elections page in addition to the packet?
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Wonderful. And then the other question on the 50K purchases, or do we need to do this one separately first?
Can we do them both first together?
Do them separately.
Okay, do you have a motion for B1A?
So moved, Madam President.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, the motion carries. Okay.
That was Mr. Moss.
Okay, B1D.
One of the, under instructional technology, there was layer 3, there was a new $3.5 million request for a wireless infrastructure project. I just wanted to get a little bit more information on what that was.
Good evening.
Hi, how you
I'm
doing?
going to defer that to Mr. Tom Johnston.
Okay. Good delegation.
So, before you speak, can I just say something? Sure. I want you all to know how absolutely talented this woman is. She really does. You all, I'm not going to say the district, but, when it comes to cyber attacks and things, Doretta does a fantastic job. In fact, what she also does is go out and helps other districts. When there was a district that was cyber attacked, she went over and helped them get it under control. So you don't usually see her here, so I'm going to take just a moment to just tell you how amazing she is because she's behind the scenes a lot. So go ahead, Doretta.
Yes, sir. You have questions?
Just trying to understand what it just says wireless infrastructure project, but because it's an additional 3.5, so is this a new project, different, or what are we doing with that? 'Cause that's obviously pretty
Actually,
good.
we're moving it forward a little bit. At the last board meeting, you actually approved an RFP. It was 12-22, I believe was the number, which is a project it's a combination of our own funding and E-rate funding to replace all the wired and the switch infrastructure of the campuses. And so what we had originally planned was to wait for the E-rate reimbursement money to come in next November, December, which meant this school year where there wasn't going to be any funds expenditured. But after conversations with the executive staff and that, they were like, go ahead and move it forward. So it moved into this year. So we had to come back to you and say, okay, we're going to spend $3.5 million now, then we'll spend the rest of it in the next 2 years.
Okay, so the upgrades will happen in the coming months.
It will actually start this summer.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate that.
Mhm.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Item 12, reports. A, interim financial and management reports. B, awarded bid report. Those have been provided for you. Item 13, discussion and possible action regarding board members' request for items to be placed on a future agenda and our request for reports from the administration. Do I have someone wishing to request something?
Members, got one request for a report. As we're talking about the good governance mindset going forward, I was requesting a report for the board from internal audit on the last 3 quarterly updates, since currently the full board doesn't get the quarterly updates. That way we all have the same information. If we could get that as a report.
He wants the quarterly.
The
updates
quarterly
for-
internal audit report.
Yeah, that can just be provided as a report, right? I can. Ms.
Ms.
Shoesmith.
Shoesmith. So Mr. Hilliard has a request for internal audit quarterly updates. I mean, you can provide those, can you not, to the full board? Or is there, I don't want to talk for you, so.
Because you provide those to me.
I
and-
apologize. I was out of the room looking up something. I provide quarterly updates to the president and superintendent.
So he would like to know if we could provide that to the whole board. How would we do that? Provide quarterly reports?
I don't know if that's something that quite possibly you could share after our meeting, disseminate out to the board, or
So
I
I
could
would just-
prepare something purposely in that matter to send out.
Yeah, because we discussed this, I know in board training in November, one of the best practices from UT Law was to do it where you come to executive session, or if we can do it as a report, whatever is the easiest, but just so that we all have the same information at the same time with each
Sure.
quarterly report, so we know what's going on.
Yeah, there are definitely entities, audit entities out there that do report to a audit committee and do that. I mean, every district, holds that a little differently, but so I'm not opposed to it by any means.
Okay, maybe we need to explore the best way to do that report.
Before we do a motion, maybe make sure that.
So I'll visit with you and then maybe with Mr. Lopez, just to see the best way to disseminate that information. Because I don't know if it's coming to an executive session, in closed session. I don't know if it's giving a report. Are you thinking? You don't know. Okay. I think that, let me just figure out the best way if it's,
I'll provide you
because I don't
copies.
have it as an email, right? I have it as a paper copy, so I don't know if it's just making a copy and putting it in your packets.
Sure.
And so let me figure out the best way to do that.
Okay.
So do I have, so that's, are we
You
going to
make an
make a motion?
agenda item out of it, or a report for later?
Make an
out of it?
agenda item, or?
Yeah, we just answer the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just get the answer when you
Okay.
have the information.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's make an
Yeah.
agenda item when we have
Okay,
something,
okay.
some outlines, some
Okay.
guidelines.
I'm
Anything
happy
else?
to do whatever you'd like. so.
Okay. I'll follow up.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else? Item 14, adjournment, and the time is 8:32.